Economist, an activist, originally from Venezuela, policy advocate, both for the inclusive economic reform and for your home country of Venezuela. Jorge.
We grew up in a country in which every year things were going for the worse. Thousands of companies were expropriated. Many of my friends were kidnapped. When people talk about economic collapse or political collapse, you only see the statistics.
Your whole life, you have only seen a authoritarian regime. You've seen Chavez and you've seen Maduro. How, being in this environment, did you actually come up with an idea that change is possible?
So I was one of the first people who analyzed how Iran was helping sanctions evasion to Venezuela. There are many people who see obstacles, others see opportunities. I always see opportunities in life. I truly believe that in life, if you work for something and you have your mind towards a goal, you achieve that. Freedom is not in Venezuela yet. We are not a democracy yet. In Venezuela, in 2019, we thought that we were very close to freedom, and then 2 years ago, we thought that we will never get away from the dictatorship. I don't want to die knowing that my country is in a humanitarian collapse.
Welcome to On Human Journey. And we are here today in Brussels, 2 weeks after the overhaul of the presidency and the regime in Venezuela. And I would like to ask you to start with telling me the story of how you ended up here, how you ended up in Brussels, all the way from Venezuela, and what is it that you do more in detail in your everyday life?
I mean, by the way, thank you for the interview. And as many people that were born in my generation of Venezuelans, we grew up in a country in which every year things were going for the worse. I remember every year seeing the economy worse and worse. Every year we lost elections because there were still stolen elections. I grew up in a country in which many thousands of companies were expropriated. Many of my friends were kidnapped. Again, so much injustices. So when you grew up in that environment, it's natural that you start thinking questions about the economy, about what does the economy mean, how should it function, how does the political system should function, and that really sparked my curiosity about economics, and it really motivated me to make a change in my country. Because when people talk about economic collapse or political collapse, you only see the statistics. But when you live through them, you realize that these are families, these are real people, that they spend their entire life building something, and then a politician comes and steals from them. So that really motivated me to work on this. And as you mentioned, I work a lot in the policy front, because I believe that inside democracies, you have the tools and the instruments to bring change. And the way you can do that is through policy, is through going to Congress, to parliaments, is through working with governments, with civil society, to bring positive change. And that's something that I also want to one day bring back to Venezuela. So yeah, that's why life brought me to this path. And these days I spend time in Brussels and I spend time in Washington.
Mm-hmm. But your childhood, you grew up in Venezuela. How old were you when you left?
I left the first time when I was 18. And then I grew up in Venezuela. I grew up in Venezuela in a city called Barquisimeto. It's a smaller city inside the country. And the first time I left Venezuela was when I was 18 years old, because the year before there was big protest in my country, 2014. Big protest. Many people went to prison. Many young people went to prison. So I was involved in this protest, even though I was 16, 17 years old. So I decided to move to the US. I did university in the US, in Florida. I got a scholarship. And my thinking was to always come back to Venezuela. Mm-hmm. During my years of university, I started advocating for a free Venezuela. I started going to different universities in the US, different think tanks. It was the first time I knew international institutions. And then when I graduated university, I had the interesting decision of coming back to Venezuela. Mm-hmm. So I graduated, I was 21 or 22 at the time, and I came back to Venezuela. This was a bit before COVID. Mm-hmm. COVID hit in Venezuela, and I started writing articles about the way the government was abusing COVID policy to blackmail business people or to control the population. And I actually wrote a series of articles that were very famous at the time about the way sanctions were being evaded in Venezuela. I wrote that in National Review magazine, in Foreign Policy magazine, and the National Interest magazine. And it became very well known because I was one of the first people who analyzed how Iran was helping sanctions evasion to Venezuela. After writing that, I knew I had to leave again. So I left.
Because you didn't feel safe.
Yes, of course. Of course. I didn't feel safe. I didn't have any direct threat, but I knew that I could do better if I was outside the country. So I left Venezuela. This was in 2021. And sadly, I have not been in Venezuela for the past 4 or 5 years.
But when you were growing up, so you grew up basically your whole life, you have only seen a authoritarian regime. You've seen Chavez and you've seen Maduro. How, being in this environment, did you actually come up with an idea that change is possible, that everybody can influence or persuade the policymakers to bring about change? Because a lot of times when you are constantly living in the place where nothing is possible for an average human being, you don't really have a lot of hope because you see that it's nearly impossible, chances equal zero, to change the regime, to bring it down. So what brought you this belief?
I think that it's a mindset thing. There are many people who see obstacles, others see opportunities. I always see opportunities in life. Where does this came from? I will need to do a psychological analysis or why I have this belief. But I truly believe that in life, if you work for something and you have your mind towards a goal, you achieve that. I believe that this is true in small things in life. I believe this is true in big things in life. And I always grew up with the notion that whatever I could put my mind into, I could make it. So I never thought the situation of Venezuela as an irreparable problem. I always thought that if bad people create bad outcomes, good people can create good outcomes. And if you have enough smart people thinking about a problem, we can solve that problem. I believe it's an important mindset, and it's the mindset of people who build things. Because the situation in Venezuela is very complex, but I could say that many businesses are very complex. Many engineering challenges are very complex. But when people put their minds, they can make it happen. I think when you grow up in an environment like that, you have two options. You can become an outcome of your circumstances. So you can allow your circumstances to give you depression, hopelessness, insecurities, or you can understand that and turn that into positive change for you. And I really think that the situation in Venezuela is so complicated that the best way to handle it is one step at a time. So in my opinion, the way I was pursuing this problem was always do one step ahead. Always see the way you can contribute, and whether it's small or big. I think we always need to contribute. So at the beginning, as I was mentioning to you, I was going to universities and giving speeches at universities. Because at the time I was 21 years old. So I remember thinking, university students in the US, they need to see what's going on in my country, so they eventually support a change in my country. Especially the students that in the future will work at the State Department, or they will work in financial sector, or they will work in the US government in general. So I was going to many universities. As a 21-year-old, I was going to Stanford, to Harvard, to these universities to give this type of speeches. And I was also contacting the nonprofits. This was in 2017. At the time, there was not much understanding about Venezuela, unlike today. So I did that. Then I did bigger things. Then you do bigger things. And then you start winning, slowly winning. And you also start building yourself, your capacities, your understanding of the world. And I think that's the way everybody can build a good legacy in their life. And the way I always approach it is that I can turn the rebuilding of my country, the improvement of my country as one of my personal legacies.
That's beautiful. But what about people in Venezuela who are there right now? Because we see a lot of voices, especially in the past couple of weeks, but also in a lot of Venezuelans who I met, they're always outside of the country, and it's understandable. They don't feel safe, so they leave. They either seek asylum or they leave for professional reasons, but still most of them are in the US. We have some in Europe, some of the Venezuelans who also work in policy and in advocacy. But what about people who are in the country right now? We spoke earlier today. You told me that they cannot even repost still your speeches and what you and others are doing. Do you know how is the environment there at the moment?
The environment in Venezuela is extremely complex, complicated, suffocating for people because you live in an environment in which you cannot express yourself. If you are a person in Venezuela, you cannot support what happened 2 weeks ago because you could go to jail. You cannot express yourself politically, but you can also not express yourself personally, professionally, because you cannot build your life. In Venezuela, you cannot be an engineer and build a nice building. You cannot be academic. You cannot be an artist. You don't have any freedom in life in Venezuela. But the same way that I believe I had a choice to make, whether to live with hopelessness or with optimism, I think everybody has this choice. And I really feel that even if you are a prisoner in war, you have a choice. And by the way, I'm not the first one saying this. You have a whole intellectual tradition who believes in that. I really like to read the Stoics, for example. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, all these, Seneca, because they really believe, and I believe, that your freedom is in your mind. Doesn't matter how much challenges you have or how much limitations you have physically. If you are free of spirit, you are a free person. And there is an interesting story of, for example, a former general of the US who was captured in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. So he was captured in Vietnam for 7 years. And he said that he was, for not even one day, he was not free, that he was always free, because in his mind, he knew that one day at a time, he will overcome this situation. And he said that when he was captured, he left the world of freedom, but entered a different kind of freedom, which is your own personal, I would say, hard work optimism. So I really believe in that. And I think it's a good lesson for people who are in very tragic situations. Mm-hmm. Somebody who is facing cancer, somebody who is facing bankruptcy, somebody who is facing political prisoner. If you have a strong enough mind, you can overcome these challenges.
That's true. That is true. We have a lot of power in our mind. But at the same time, maybe you remember Belarus, for example. It was 2020 or 2021 when Lukashenko stole the election from Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. So many people went in the streets. They really wanted free Belarus because Lukashenko was also staying 26 years in power non-stop. And the things that were happening to people were horrible. They were taken into the prison. They were tortured. They were raped. They were abused in so many different ways. You remember also some of our acquaintances who spent a lot of time in Belarusian prison for their activism and for speaking out. And then at some point, all of these protests of thousands and thousands and thousands of people stopped because the crackdown on them was so strong that it was nearly impossible to continue. And a lot of people left, and some of them are living calm lives, some of them are still continuing the advocacy, but it is... you want to have hope that the regime will change, and people will live a freer life and more prosperous and better. So now we're seeing that with the U.S. administration taking more proactive measures, taking Maduro out, the hope is coming for Venezuela. But do you think that it's really there already, or that it's still going to take time?
It is just one first step. Freedom is not in Venezuela yet. We are not a democracy yet. The only thing that has happened is that Maduro is no longer there. But all his state apparatus still functions in Venezuela. From the military to the people running the ministries, to the people running the security services, the drug dealing networks, all is there in Venezuela. So this is just one first step. I believe that is a first step of many good steps that will come to Venezuela. I believe that there is a decisive pressure, intention coming from the international community to make a change in Venezuela for security reasons, for democratic reasons, and for economic reasons. The US has taken very proactive measures because they understand the gravity of the problem that is taking place in Venezuela. It's honestly a national security and a regional security concern. The fact that Venezuela has become a hub for criminal activities, criminal networks, human rights violations, and a migratory crisis. Within that context, what we have to do is to be leading, co-leading, or sharing the responsibility of building this bridge towards democracy, which is not going to be easy because you need the technical capabilities. You need people on the ground. You need specialists that will come back to the country to rebuild the state, so all the ministries, all the embassies, all the details of running a state in a context like Venezuela, but also the private sector. You need people that will be able to run the energy industry, the banking sector, the infrastructure, the electricity, the telecommunications. So you need people that will come back, and that's something that we Venezuelans, we have to own the responsibility of rebuilding this country. These processes, the process of bringing back democracy, are not easy processes. Venezuela has been for more than 20 years in a dictatorship, in a declining situation that you will not solve in 3 months or in 6 months or even in 1 year. It will take time. But I think it's an understanding of the fact that it will take time, that it brings me tranquility, because I understand that it's going to be a challenging process. And one day there's more optimism. Today there was amazing optimism. I gave a speech in the parliament. I have people meeting with me. But tomorrow there may be less optimism. But if you maintain a steady mindset towards defeat and success, optimism and pessimism, you can really handle the situation. The situation of Belarus, in which 1 year you think that you are close to freedom, and the next year you think that you're very far away, is a situation that all these authoritarian countries face. In Venezuela, in 2019, we thought that we were very close to freedom. Mm-hmm. And then 2 years ago, we thought that we will never get away from the dictatorship. So you just need to balance that out. Be less radically emotional about the situation, which of course I know is very difficult.
That's actually so true, because so many people, literally January 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, there was so much either like extreme happiness, which is great, of course, and then so much condemnation, so much anger also online, which you don't understand why. I mean, we are actually moving towards something that can give us hope, but of course takes a long time and many measures, but at least it kind of, brings it back to this, like, okay, the hope, the belief that it's possible, it brings back. But
yeah, I think healthy emotions are good. You need to wake up with energy and with hope and with optimism. It's just that too radical emotions, the only thing that I can bring is deep swings. So you really need to be even in life to understand that it's just the nature of life. And it happens with countries. It also happens in personal life, in which one day you have great news, the next day you have very bad news. and you just need to face every news with the same level of tranquility.
Yeah, true. Now Iran, we are hoping, right, that the protests will succeed. But it's also, I love observing how everything is connected around the world. Every single event contributes to the other. We have war in Ukraine. It helps, it actually prevents Russia from being very active participant in all of their other areas where they've been putting their networks and influence. So then you saw the fall in Syria, now you're seeing fall in Venezuela, now you're seeing fall in Iran. So there is, some correlation, connection between all of this, obviously. And Venezuela was a hub of all of the bad guys, pretty much. Do you know if they're still very strong in the country? Russians, Iranian?
Yes, I think everything is interconnected in the sense that all these regimes are connected in many ways, economically, militarily, politically. One of the reasons that I believe Venezuela has a very good window of opportunity is because many of its allies are way more weaker today than they were 2 years ago. So close allies like Iran, like Syria are weaker. Cuba is weaker. China and Russia are busy with other issues. As you mentioned, Russia is busy with its own aggression against Ukraine. And China has also other priorities. But the fact that Syria failed is an underrated aspect of why Venezuela is in this situation, because Syria was supporting in many ways Venezuela. And Iran, the fact that Iran is way weaker today than a year ago, is also a fact. So I believe that everything is interconnected. Of course, many of these groups still operate in Venezuela and have dramatic influence in Venezuela, but it's part of cleaning the country, the fact that we also need to clean the country from these bad actors.
I think also another question that many people are still having, and I can't not ask, does Maria Corina Machado have the potential to actually become the president?
Yeah, she does. Like, she has all the potential in the world because most Venezuelans want her. Most Venezuelans want her to be president. She is a very courageous, strong woman. So I think that she has all the chances in the world. It will not be an easy path because for us to reach a point in which members of the opposition can have political power, it will take a bit of time. But I think it can eventually happen. And she's somebody that very courageous person.
She is, yes, but in the first days, I think a lot of people were expecting Trump to nominate her, but that didn't happen.
Because of the realities on the ground. A transition in Venezuela is a very complex process because Venezuela is devastated. So Venezuela is devastated economically, but also from the security perspective. It's a country that is run by criminal groups, that the institutions are completely corrupted, that it's not a safe country. It's not an easy country to govern. So within that paradigm, within that reality, I think it's understandable why there cannot be an easy or a straightforward transition towards a full democracy. There will be a transition period, a transition time, which we hope it will not take too much time. But yeah, I think that situation in Venezuela got lost for many years. This country was destroyed many years. The reconstruction will not be in a couple of days.
Yeah, fair. What about your parents? Are they still there?
No, my parents are not there locally.
Yeah.
They're
in another
somewhere
place,
around.
Yeah. So you don't have any family left?
I have family members, but they are extended family members, not direct family members.
So you can keep doing all of the advocacy safely and with peace of mind.
Yes, and if somebody mess with my extended family, I also have resources.
Yeah, that's good.
It's very important in this life to always understand how to protect yourself, because politics has this kind of bad actors, but you need to be able to dissuade them from doing anything.
But do you see yourself potentially in the future coming back? Let's say if it's safe, if we have Venezuela has democratic president and is on the path to recovery.
Yes, I believe so. I see myself coming back to Venezuela and trying to help with a reconstruction of the country. It's something that I'm deeply passionate about. I would love to dedicate my time to rebuilding my country's either financial system or a state architecture in any way, shape or form. And I think we have right now 80% of people in poverty and 50% of people in extreme poverty. If we can do the right economic measures to bring this back, to bring many people back to the middle class, that's what I believe could be my biggest challenge and motivation. Because bringing people back from poverty to a decent quality of life, this should be the number one priority of any democratic government in Venezuela. And I would love to be part of that. I know it will not be easy. It will be very challenging. It is a very insecure country right now. But as I was mentioning, we have this historical obligation, I believe, responsibility, the people in my generation, to give back to our country and to rebuild our country. Because it's very different to be born in Venezuela than to be born in Netherlands or in Canada. We were born in a humanitarian crisis type of country, so we need to give back to our country. Because I don't want to die knowing that my country is in a humanitarian collapse and the place I grew up is a place full of misery. This is not the type of country I want. So yeah, I would love to be back for a few years maybe.
It's in fact very true. Every time I meet anyone from Venezuela, even a few months ago I was in Washington and my Uber driver was from Venezuela, and from every person there is so much love to their country. I haven't seen a single Venezuelan who would be anywhere around the world who would not proudly say, I'm from Venezuela. So my Uber driver actually said, when we were discussing, started getting to know each other, where are you from? There was quite a long ride from the airport to the city. And he's like, I'm from the most beautiful country in the world. I'm like, where is that? But I can understand with the accent that he's somewhere from South America. And he's like, I'm from Venezuela. It's the most beautiful, like very green, very nice. Unfortunately, we have a little problem.
It's very beautiful country.
Yes. But everyone has very, very big heart and they love to their place. As like you meet usually people from anywhere, the whole world is not homogeneous, it's people are everywhere from everywhere.
Right.
But not all the time that you meet someone who's that passionate.
So you think we are particularly passionate?
In a very strong way, and it's beautiful. It's
I think it's very good.
yes, because also the alternative could be, I'm from Venezuela, I'm finally in the US, I'm living my life here and I'm happy and I'm not gonna go back. But
right. I think that
different.
Is interesting because I think you could sense the same level of pride of people after World War II. For example, from my grandparents are Italians and Lebanese. So I remember always them being very proud about Italy. They left Italy when they were young, like 15 years old. But I remember my grandfather always very proud about the fact that he was Italian. And Italy was managed to develop again its country and is now democratic and a good country. So I think having this self-respect for your country, I think is very healthy and is something that gladly we didn't lose. You are totally correct.
Yes, it's something to learn from, It's a big lesson to take. Like now, after the war in Ukraine started, I see Ukrainians all the time, very, very proud of, but obviously very sad. But it's hasn't been always like this. You don't have that much passion, emotion. Sometimes I'm thinking maybe because we were told for the hundreds of years that we are not worthy. For some people that penetrated, and that's why we had the language problem, that so many people were speaking Russian, so that Putin would think that, oh, they speak Russian, so we can, play on this issue. Yeah, but that's not, there is a lot to learn, and I think now our nation is becoming very conscious. We actually use this connotation of we are now becoming a conscious nation and understanding our heritage, our history, being proud of it.
Okay.
And it took a lot of...
So you feel Ukrainians are more proud these days, they're more patriotic than before the war?
Yes, because before you didn't have to imagine the world where your country does not exist on the map at all.
Yes, which is a chilling idea to even think about.
Yes.
Venezuelans, for sure, are more patriotic now than 30 years ago. I was not born 30 years ago, but that's my sense of the people of my parents' generation. Way less patriotic. But I think it makes sense when you live in a place that can be erased, as you mentioned, you become more patriotic. And if you leave the country, you also become more patriotic. I became more Venezuelan when I left Venezuela because you missed it every day and you think about it more. When you grow up in a country, you think about it, but when you go somewhere else, you think about it even more. Yes. So, and in history, you see a lot of writers and poets and artists in general who are in exile. They become the biggest representations of their own culture, even though they are writing or painting from exile. So I think in history, this is true.
It's also our human nature, I think. You want something that you cannot have. So your mind starts wondering, how is it there right now? Because you cannot go right now. It's not safe. It's also a good feature of a human being, that we remember the good when we imagine the good. And while we fear the bad, we still hope for the better. And I think it's a very, very good nature of a human being, because otherwise we would just put our hands down and start crying and the world will end.
That's never useful, yes.
Yes, exactly. So what is next for you in your journey? You're doing a lot of activism right now, also on economic inclusion. Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, exactly. For me, I'm running my organization. I have both a non-profit and I have a consultancy in the US, and we work a lot on economic issues. We try to do positive change. We advise policymakers and business people on what I consider complex economic issues. So, for example, we advise people on an issue called debanking, which is the fact that many companies and organizations in the US and in Europe are losing their access to financial services. So they're losing their bank accounts. It's not a public issue, it's very private. But many companies who work on international business or non-profits or people that work in politics, people that work in defense, they cannot open bank accounts or the bank accounts are shut down. It's because of a regulatory problem. It's an issue of specific regulations in the US and in Europe. And I'm trying to fix that. So I'm trying to fix that in the US Congress, here in the European Parliament, in the Council of Europe. I'm trying to move reforms. So in my organization, we work a lot on that issue. We work a lot on economic issues, especially financial issues. So I would say that that's a big issue. The adoption of crypto assets for financial inclusion, I care about that a lot. I care about maintaining freedom in the banking system and in the financial system. We work a lot on trade issues. So I founded my organization 2 years ago and we have been growing every single month on these very niche economic questions. And of course, right now I have also, I'm opening a specific branch just focused on Venezuela. We want to analyze not only the broad trends in Venezuela, because people talk about oil trends or real estate or any kind of foreign direct investment that can come to Venezuela. But we want to analyze the specifics. We want to know which areas of the country is better to invest, which other areas need more development or security, which specific type of real estate should be, investment should be allocated there first. How is the oil industry? What issues do we really have in specific parts of the oil industry? So we want to map out all the problems of Venezuela with higher level of detail that anybody has done so far. So that's what I'm working on. I spent few weeks here, few weeks traveling, and this has been my life for the past 2 years.
What inspired this specific issue?
The issue, for example, debanking.
Yeah. What inspired you to start working on it?
It's a very niche problem.
Yes.
I remember 3 years ago, like 3 years ago, I was in a private dinner with some people who are very high-level, well-known political people, activists and politicians. And I remember somebody was mentioning that they could not open bank account in Europe because they are considered a politically exposed person. Even though they have never held public office, is because of the level of social media and media publicity, etc. Because of this, banks consider this person a high-risk person. So banks consider them too controversial. So banks decided to not open a bank account for this person. To me, that was shocking because I never heard anybody mentioning this problem directly. I knew that it could happen to maybe an immigrant or somebody without documentation. And in that dinner, like 4 people raised their hands and they said, this is also happening to them. I was shocked. I remember then trying to research about it, and there was no information. There's no research. There's no understanding about this, and there is no policy solution. If your bank closes your account, there is no way that you can restore it. There is no place that you can go to ask for a bank account.
And a lot of times they don't even give you an explanation.
Yes, in fact, they are not allowed to do so. So banks are blocked from giving you explanation by regulation. So the regulation tells banks to not disclose why they close bank accounts. So the victims don't have a way to know why or to find a solution. I started doing more digging, and many people in many industries are facing this problem. And my theory is that if we don't make a reform now, in 10 years, nobody working in politics broadly will have a bank account. Nobody working in non-profit sector or humanitarian sector will have a bank account. Nobody working on military or defense or energy issues will have a bank account, because all these groups will be under so much compliance pressure by especially anti-money laundering regulations and financial compliance in general, that they will be too costly for banks to have as clients. But if we live in a world in which people don't have access to financial services, what kind of free market do we live in? What kind of democracy do we live in? And for me, the most interesting thing is that I can count with my fingers of 2 hands the amount of people that understand this problem really well in the world. It's just, there is many experts on tax policy, there is many experts on trade, there is many experts on other issues. On this, people have no idea. Why? Because it's so secretive problem. Institutions are not allowed to speak about this because regulation doesn't allow them to do. The victims cannot speak about this because it's a huge shame for them.
Exactly, that's exactly what I was thinking. It's like, why would I go and advertise that my bank account was shut down? So because you feel like you did something wrong.
Yes.
And then, what if the other bank where I still have my account sees that and,
Yes, imagine if you say that, then if you have suppliers, they will freak out. If you have a board of directors, they will freak out. If you are a nonprofit and you have donors, they will not want to give you more donations. If you are a normal person, if you're a politician, everybody will think that you are corrupt, and that's why you lost your bank account. So there is a huge chilling effect to people. So that's why nobody talks about it. But I have been told by former prime ministers, I have been told by former high-level diplomats, owners of big companies, owners of extremely big foundations, they all have this problem.
Wow.
Huge problem. And it's not easy to fix. They go to lawyers, and lawyers have no idea how to actually navigate this problem because it's so niche and specific that if you go to a regular lawyer, even a financial one, they will not understand what's going on. Because most of this information we are just producing now. It is something that 10 years ago, this was not such big of an issue.
Wow. That's impressive. I'm very happy you're doing this.
Yes. I think it's very important work. It's difficult to communicate. It's difficult to raise awareness. But I think it's very important job. And I'm trying to bring reforms. I'm trying to put an end to this compliance issue that is being created. And I think there are ways of doing it in a very sensible way.
Absolutely. So now, next week, Davos?
Yes, I'm going to Davos next week.
It looks like you're bringing the problem to the right ears,
I try to bring the problem to all ears. So I speak from the most conservative person to the most liberal person. I try to bring the issue to all geographies and all type of people. I believe that as long as somebody doesn't support authoritarianism, I think I can speak to that person and raise awareness. So I'm going to Davos to speak at a couple of side events taking place there. It will be my first time going there, and I'm really trying to make the most out of it because I'm pretty sure that there can be people there that can help the cause and that they can help advance what we want to do in Venezuela or with the debanking problem or in general these policy issues. That's going to be very exciting.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Jorge. My last question is, so what is it that you dream about? Because it looks like a lot of things that you dream about, you are actually working towards. But what is it that, you dream about for the society, for people, for you?
Yes, I don't have dreams. I have objectives. You need to really understand where you want to go. But jokes aside, it's really what I dream is to be able to produce a positive contribution to society. I really dream about me living a life in which every year I do something meaningful to give people more economic opportunities, more human freedom, give economic development. I really have this social aspect of my life. There are some people who they are focused on having great businesses, other people who are artists, other people who want to build great buildings, other people who want to be academic. I really want to be somebody that I can use my knowledge to make society better and focus on economic issues. So what I dream about is an opportunity in which I can apply my energy and efforts into making a better Venezuela. And I think that will happen hopefully very soon.
Por una Venezuela libre.
Exacto.
I love this. A man with a purpose. It's. I really wish you luck, and I hope that we will see a free Venezuela and also a more free market, economically freer world.
You are welcome in Venezuela.
Thank you.